Here's an interesting article here. Uh, Going back in America's past, Cadillac's cultural turn. And it says here, the author writes, and this is by Warren Brown, and he wrote this December 24th, 1995. He said, "My mother, Lillian Gadsden Brown, always wanted a Cadillac, but she couldn't find a dealership that would sell her one. Not in segregated New Orleans anyway. She was black. And in the 1950s and 60s, the few blacks entering Cadillac dealerships in New Orleans tended to be the people who cleaned those places. My mother was a professional, that is, she belonged to what was known in black New Orleans as a professional family. Her husband was a teacher who did some occasional biological research for the National Science Foundation. But that wasn't enough to get her a respectful passage through the doors of local Cadillac dealerships, where some salespeople laughed at her outright, or directed her to a used car lot to shop for battered Chevrolets. So my mother did the next best thing. She bought a Cadillac from a rich white man in nearby Metairie, Louisiana, for what she deemed a good price. It was a 1965 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, midnight blue with a cream white top, white leather interior, and white wall tires. My mother cleaned that car weekly. At least she ordered her children to wash, wax, and polish it with clean, soft cloths. Please, don't scratch my car. And when she stepped into the sparkling caddy, she would become a black Cinderella en route to a ball, even though her destination was Wegmans supermarket in East New Orleans. Many blacks in New Orleans and around the United States, including people with more money than my mother, bought their Cadillacs and other expensive cars, Packards, Lincolns, and Chrysler New Yorkers, second-hand from whites. Sometimes those blacks actually bought their luxury cars new by paying white buyers, front men, to shop for them. The roundabout purchases stemmed from the market precepts of the time. General Motors Corporation's Cadillac division billed itself as the standard of automotive excellence. Blacks, by virtue of their social and economic standing in pre-civil rights America, were regarded as anything but excellent. Through much of the 1930s, Cadillac had an unwritten policy of not selling to blacks, according to automotive historian Leon Mandel, author of the book American Cars, and John Steele Gordon, who wrote on the subject in the November 1995 issue of American Heritage magazine. Cadillac was after the prestige market, and part of its strategy to capture that market was its refusal to sell to blacks, Gordon wrote in an article that is now being distributed by Cadillac. Nowadays, Cadillac is still after the prestige market, but the car division and its parent company have undergone a cultural revolution in the last decade. In the process, Cadillac has re-examined its notion of prestige. Simply put, prestige is now market share, said Charles Carradine, a black 45-year-old Detroit native and marketing executive who serves as co-chairman of what Cadillac calls its diversity marketing program. Carradine said his parents too encountered problems in trying to purchase Cadillacs. But now we are leading the automotive industry in diversity marketing. We are going to be used as a template for all of GM's marketing strategies in reaching out to African Americans, Hispanics, women, and people with disabilities, Carradine said. What's changed is that General Motors has decided to pay attention to what Cadillac service manager Nicholas Drystad tried to tell the company in the 1930s. Drystad noticed that affluent blacks who never appeared in Cadillac new car showrooms were bringing their cars in for service. He discovered that many of those black-owned Caddies were bought by white frontmen. Drystad urged GM's top executives to begin marketing Cadillacs directly to blacks, or at least allow them to come into the showrooms. GM and Cadillac accepted Drystad's suggestion, a move that helped to boost Cadillac sales in the mid and late 1930s. In the midst of the Great Depression, Drystad was promoted to general manager of the Cadillac division, white excellence. But with a resurgence of the economy in post-World War II America came a resurgence of ethnocentrism that once again defined excellence as white, as evidenced by all of Cadillac's print and television advertisements of the period. Not one of those hundreds of ads showed blacks or members of any other minority groups, for that matter, buying or owning Cadillac cars. Certainly, Cadillac was not alone in exclusionary advertising. Practically all of the automotive advertisements of the 1940s through the 1970s showed whites only. That was the history. That was the way we were, said William J. O'Neill, a former Cadillac spokesman, who now handles public relations for GM Chevrolet division. Explained O'Neill, there are now 36 million owners of Chevrolet Geo cars and trucks. In the past, in our eyes, we probably would have classified all of those people as looking alike, essentially white and Midwestern. Well, we have changed, O'Neill said. We have done research. We now realize that not only do those people not look alike, but they don't always speak the same language, nor do they shop for vehicles or look at prices the same way or have the same values. But all of those people do have one thing in common. They all want cars and trucks. And we want to be the people to sell them those cars and trucks, O'Neill said. Reaching all of those different groups, speaking directly to them, is important for any automaker trying to make headway in a U.S. auto market that is growing by a scant 0.5% annually, said Tad Malesh, a senior consultant and analyst at J.D. Power and Associates, a market research in Agora Hills, California. They are facing economic reality, Malesh said, of the automakers' diversity and marketing efforts. They are in an environment where overall auto sales can't grow a great deal, which means they have to increase their sales by increasing marketing efficiency. They have to do a better job of targeting specific groups, women, minorities, etc., Malesh said. All of those people have been car buyers for years, But for years, the auto industry has been wedded to a mass marketing concept that spoke to buyers as if they were a monolith. Malek said, that practice has hurt domestic car companies among blacks who for decades have been strong supporters of U.S. automakers. Blacks have been remarkably loyal customers of the U.S. car industry over the years, considering the way Detroit treated them in the past. And although blacks have increased their purchases of foreign cars in recent years, they have done so at a far slower rate than the country as a whole. Domestics have the largest share of black buyers, but that share over the years has remained flat, Malek said. In 1989, for example, blacks accounted for 3.2% of all new domestic passenger cars sold in the United States. They accounted for 3.3% of those sales in 1995, according to power estimates of minority auto purchasers. The effort to woo minority buyers these days is driven by one color only, said Malek, green. And that's green for the U.S. currency. Minority marketing experts such as Jorge Lascano agree. The fact is that you have 26 million Hispanics in the United States, which means that, numerically, you have a larger potential market than you have in Canada, said Lascano, president of the Miami-based Lascano Associates Incorporated, one of the largest Hispanic marketing firms in the country. Lascano's company handles Hispanic marketing initiative for Chevrolet, as well as for a number of other big-name clients, including Pillsbury Company and Stouffer Food Corporation. Doing serious research, ethnic or diversity marketing, both of which live under the rubric of relationship marketing, does not mean translating mass market messages from English to Spanish, Lascano said. It means doing serious research, find out what works in one community versus another. It also means paying a lot of attention to differences within a group, Lascano said. People say Hispanics, but some Hispanics prefer to be called Latinos, Lascano said. Hispanics, Latinos include Cubans, Colombians, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, and others, all of whom may speak the same language, but who have different cultures, he stressed. The key to addressing cultural differences successfully is to appeal to them without stereotyping the target audience or alienating the general population, Lascano and Carradine said. For example, all of Cadillac's research among blacks says that we don't want to be singled out or treated differently. It simply says that we want to be included and treated as a real part of America, Carradine said. To that end, Cadillac is weaving images of black professionals and family life into its advertisement, images similar to those routinely used to portray whites. The idea is to create a warm and fuzzy feeling, one that plays to black cultural nuances, such as dress, language, and body language, but that has lots of crossover appeal for whites, Carradine said. General Motors also is running similar ads, showing people with disabilities, including one TV ad showing disabled people with the U.S. Olympic ski team and a Chevrolet Tahoe sport utility vehicle, getting dealers involved. GM, along with other car companies, also is stepping up training programs to teach dealerships how to relate better to people from diverse backgrounds. Cadillac last year conducted 2 such programs for dealers in Philadelphia and the Washington metropolitan area. At first, there was some resistance. People didn't want to come. And when they came, they didn't want to be there because we were going to discuss diversity, said Carradine. But when we showed them how being able to work with those different groups were good for business, they became enthusiastic. He said, "My mother, who died last February, would have appreciated that kind of enthusiasm. It's such a beautiful car," she used to say of her beloved Coupe de Ville. But when the DeVille was backed into a church's brick wall by a teenage driver, she dumped the car in favor of buying what was then a new Chevrolet Celebrity and Chevrolet Cavalier. "I could have gotten another Cadillac for what I paid for the both of those," she said, somewhat overstating the case. But she explained that she just didn't want to go through the hassle of shopping another Cadillac dealer. "Those Chevrolet people," she said, "they are much nicer." Caption: advertisements for 1996 model year cars from recent issues of Ebony magazine include clockwise from top Ford Taurus, Chrysler Concorde, and General Motors sports utility vehicle, the Jimmy. Under diversity marketing, advertisers try to appeal to target audiences without alienating the general population. So this was written by Warren Brown. Warren Brown was a Washington Post auto columnist. He left the Post in 2017. He passed away in July 2018. Wow, interesting, right? Anyway, so it's interesting to know how the Cadillac was not marketed to black people in America. It was just, I mean, you couldn't go into the showroom. You know, that's really something. And many black people today probably have no idea that this was the case. You couldn't step into that Cadillac dealership because they were not going to sell you a Cadillac. What's interesting is how things have turned around, you know, whereby now we have black people who are willing to spend their money in like sneakers and all sorts of stuff, you know, practically giving away their money to buy some expensive stuff, making other people rich. And at one time, these same people said, "No, keep your money. I don't need you to do business with me, you know. Yeah, keep your money." So that's why you had what you call things like Black Wall Street and so forth, where black people had businesses, were able to create wealth. Yeah, back in the days of Jim Crow. But now with that gone, it's like, okay, let me go and buy from this guy instead of opening up my own business. Let me buy from this one, that one, and everybody else.